New Year's Eve in the city. Marcus Thompson hurries through the abandoned industrial district, his weathered jacket pulled tight against the winter chill. Another late shift at the diner. Anything to keep his daughter in school. The shortcut. Through this lot isn't ideal, but it saves precious minutes. Then he hears it, a muffled cry, barely audible over distant fireworks. Behind a crumbling wall, he discovers something impossible. A young woman in an evening gown, trapped inside a rusted cage. Her mascara-streaked face tells a story of desperation. Without hesitation, Marcus grabs a nearby pipe and begins prying. At the lock. He knows he should call the police, but something in her eyes speaks of urgency. What mysterious force brought these two souls together on this fateful night? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 8 hours earlier, Marcus Thompson pinned his name tag to his faded blue uniform shirt, smoothing out a stubborn wrinkle with calloused hands. The fluorescent lights of Joe's all-night diner cast harsh shadows across his face, highlighting the fine lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 2 years ago. At 43, he felt every one of those years in his bones, especially during the long winter shifts. "Order up for table 6! Mabel, the cook who'd been working at Joe's longer than Marcus had been alive, slid 2 plates of meatloaf across the stainless steel counter. Her eyes softened as she watched him gather the plates. "How's that girl of yours doing with those science projects?" A smile broke through Marcus's exhaustion. "Emma's got her heart set on first place this year. She's building a working model of the solar system, all recycled materials." Pride crept into his voice as he carefully balanced the plates. "Been staying up late, helping her paint the planets. Jupiter's giving us some trouble, though." "That child's got your determination, Marcus, and her mama's brains." Mabel's words carried the weight of someone who'd watched Emma grow up within these grease-stained walls. "Sarah would be proud." Marcus swallowed hard, nodding as he carried the plates to his waiting customers. Sarah's absence still felt like a fresh wound sometimes, especially during moments like these when Emma's achievements made his heart swell. His wife had always been the one with big dreams for their daughter. College, career, a life beyond the boundaries of their working class. Neighborhood. Now it fell to him alone to make those dreams reality. The dinner rush kept him moving, refilling coffee cups and taking orders with practiced efficiency. His regulars, mostly retirees and night shift workers, filled the booths with familiar faces. Old Mr. Peterson nursed his usual cup of black coffee, telling anyone who'd listen about his grandchildren in California. The Henderson sisters shared a slice of apple pie, their silver heads bent together in quiet conversation. These people were more than customers. They were witnesses to his struggles, quiet cheerleaders in his journey as a single father. Between orders, Marcus checked his phone. A text from Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor who watched Emma after school. "She's finished her homework and had dinner, working on her project now, don't worry." He typed back a quick thank you, guilt gnawing at his conscience. Another evening of Emma falling asleep before he got home. Another breakfast he'd have to rush through before school. But the extra shifts meant money for new school shoes, for science fair materials, for the little extras that kept his daughter's eyes bright with possibility. The bell above the door chimed, and Marcus looked up to see Tony, the night shift dishwasher, hurrying in 10 minutes late. The kid's face was flushed from running, his uniform wrinkled. "Sorry, Mr. Thompson." The bus was running behind, and Marcus waved off the apology. "It's fine, Tony. Get started on that stack by the sink." He remembered being 19, juggling work and community college classes, dreaming of something better. Tony reminded him of himself at that age, before Sarah, before Emma, before life had shown him that love could be both anchor and wings. As the evening wore on, Marcus's thoughts kept drifting to Emma's science project. She'd inherited Sarah's passion for learning, spending hours researching constellations and planetary movements. Last week, she'd explained black holes to him over breakfast, her hands dancing in the air as she described cosmic forces he barely understood. Her enthusiasm reminded him so much of Sarah during her teaching days that it made his chest ache. "Marcus," Mabel's voice pulled him from his reverie. "Your shift ended 10 minutes ago. Go home to your girl." He glanced at the clock. 11:15 p.m. If he hurried, he might catch Emma before she fell asleep. "Thanks, Mabel. See you tomorrow. Been here 30 years. Don't plan on stopping now." She shooed him toward the door. "Take some pie home for Emma. Growing girls need feeding." Outside, the winter air bit through his jacket. Marcus clutched the paper bag containing Mabel's pie, weighing his options. The main road would take 25 minutes, but cutting through the old industrial district would save him precious time. He'd taken that shortcut before, though never this late. But the thought of Emma, possibly still awake, waiting to show him the progress on her project, made the decision for him. As he turned down the darkened street that would lead him through the abandoned lots, Marcus had no way of knowing that this simple choice, born of a father's love and the eternal shortage of time, would change not only his life, but his daughter's future in ways he could never imagine. The distant pop of early New Year's Eve fireworks echoed through the empty streets, like cosmic signals guiding him toward his destiny. The muffled cry came again, clearer this time. Marcus stopped, his breath visible in the cold air as he listened. In the distance, celebratory fireworks continued their sporadic percussion, but underneath that festive noise, something was wrong. He'd learned to trust his instincts during his years working late shifts. They'd kept him safe more than once. The sound led him behind a crumbling brick wall where shadows gathered thick and deep. His phone's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing something that made him question his own eyes. A metal cage, roughly 6 feet square, and inside it, a woman in an evening gown that probably cost more than his monthly rent. She blinked against the sudden light, mascara-stained tears leaving dark trails down her cheeks. Her wrists were bound with zip ties, but she'd managed to work the gag partly loose. The gown, midnight blue silk, was torn at the shoulder and smeared with dirt. Despite her disheveled state, there was something regal about her bearing. "Please," she whispered, voice hoarse. "They'll be back soon." Marcus glanced around the empty lot, heart pounding. Common sense told him to call the police, but something in the woman's eyes, raw fear mixed with desperate hope, made him hesitate in the time it would take for help to arrive. He spotted a length of rusty pipe lying nearby. "Hold on," he said, keeping his voice low and steady, the same tone he used when Emma had nightmares. "I'm going to get you out." The cage's padlock was old, but sturdy. Marcus wedged the pipe through its loop and began to twist, muscles straining. The metal groaned in protest. "Behind you!" the woman gasped. Marcus spun, pipe raised defensively, but the lot remained empty. When he turned back, he saw fresh tears. In her eyes, "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I keep thinking I hear them." The lock finally gave way with a sharp crack that seemed to echo off the surrounding buildings. Marcus pulled it free and eased the cage door open, wincing at its squeal of protest. "Can you walk?" he asked, offering his hand. She nodded, taking his hand, with fingers that felt like ice. As she stepped out of the cage, her legs buckled. Marcus caught her before she could fall, supporting her weight easily. This close, he could smell expensive perfume beneath the metallic tang of fear. "I'm Marcus," he said, shrugging off his jacket and draping it over her shoulders. "There's a police station about 15 blocks from here." "No police." Her grip on his arm tightened. "Please. It's complicated." Another firework burst overhead, illuminating her face in brief colored flashes. She was younger than he'd first thought, probably in her early 30s, with features that belonged on magazine covers. But it was her eyes that held him, dark, intelligent, and haunted by something beyond tonight's ordeal. "I'm Victoria," she said, then added with a ghost of a smile, "and I know this sounds like terrible timing, but I really need to use a bathroom." The unexpected touch of humor surprised a chuckle out of Marcus. My apartment's closer than the police station. You can clean up there, make whatever calls you need to make." He hesitated, then added, "My 12-year-old daughter's home, so you'll be safe." Victoria studied him for a long moment, as if reading something in his face. "You're a good man, Marcus, I can tell." She took a shaky breath. "Lead the way." They made their way through the shadows of the industrial district, Marcus supporting Victoria when her legs trembled. Every distant sound made her flinch. He kept them to the darkest parts of each street, away from the occasional passing car. "Your jacket's warm," Victoria said softly as they walked. "But you must be freezing." "I've got good insulation." Marcus patted his stomach with his free hand, drawing another small smile from her. "Besides, my mama raised me right. She'd be proud." Victoria's voice caught. "My mother, she died when I was young. Cancer." "I'm sorry," Marcus said, hearing echoes of his own loss in her words. "My wife, Sarah, we lost her 2 years ago. Car accident." Victoria's hand found his in the darkness, squeezing gently. No platitudes, no awkward expressions of sympathy, just the simple human connection of shared understanding. They walked in companionable silence for a while, their path lit by streetlights and the occasional burst of fireworks. Victoria's steps grew steadier, though she kept close to Marcus's side. "Your daughter," she said eventually. "What's her name?" "Emma. She's probably still up, working on her science fair project. She's building a model of the solar system." "That's impressive." Victoria's voice warmed with genuine interest. "What grade is she in?" "7th. She's smart as a whip, gets that from her mother. Works harder than any kid I've ever seen." Pride crept into his voice again. "She's got her heart set on being an astronomer someday." "The stars have always fascinated me too," Victoria said softly. "When I was little, my father used to take me to his observatory. We'd spend hours looking at the constellations, talking about cosmic mysteries." Her voice turned distant. Things were simpler then. They reached the edge of Marcus's neighborhood, where tired buildings huddled close together under the winter sky. Victoria didn't comment on their surroundings, but Marcus felt a flicker of self-consciousness. After the elegant sweep of her evening gown, his world must seem shabby indeed. "It's not much," he began, but Victoria cut him off with a gentle touch to his arm. "It's perfect," she said firmly. "You've shown me more kindness in the past hour than I've experienced in longer than I care to remember." As they approached his building, Marcus noticed a black SUV parked across the street, its engine running. Victoria saw it too. He felt her whole body tense. "Wait," she whispered, pulling him into the shadow of a doorway. "We need to go around the back. There's something you should know about who I am and why I was in that cage. But first, I need you to trust me one more time." Marcus looked down at her, this elegant stranger who had literally dropped into his life from behind a cage. Common sense screamed at him to walk away, to call the police, to protect himself and Emma from whatever trouble followed in this woman's wake. But there was something in her eyes, a mix of strength and vulnerability, fear and determination, that reminded him of Sarah in her final months, fighting against odds that couldn't be beaten. "I trust you," he said simply, and led her toward the back entrance of his building, away from the watching SUV. As they slipped inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that this night was about to become even more complicated than finding a caged woman in an abandoned lot. The story of Victoria Blackwood and how she would change his and Emma's lives forever was just beginning. Marcus's apartment building had never seemed so quiet. Every creak of the back stairs made Victoria pause, her hand tightening on his arm. They moved slowly, staying close to the wall, until they reached the 3rd floor. A worn welcome mat with faded sunflowers marked his door. "Mrs. Rodriguez," he called softly as he unlocked the door. "It's Marcus." The elderly woman appeared from the living room, her silver hair in its usual neat bun. She took one look at Victoria and pressed a hand to her chest. "Dios mío!" "It's okay," Marcus assured her quickly. "This is Victoria. She's a friend who needs help." Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes darted between them, taking in Victoria's torn evening gown and Marcus's missing jacket. After raising 4 children in this neighborhood, she knew better than to ask too many questions. Emma is sleeping. She wanted to wait up, but she gathered her shawl. I'll come by tomorrow to check on you all. Once she was gone, Victoria sagged against the wall. The bathroom. Down the hall, first door on the right. There's a first aid kit under the sink if you need it. Marcus hesitated. I can find you some clean clothes. They'll be too big, but thank you. The simple words carried the weight of genuine gratitude. While Victoria was in the bathroom, Marcus checked on Emma. She slept peacefully, her desk cluttered with half-painted styrofoam planets and carefully labeled orbits. Jupiter, still giving them trouble, sat unfinished beside her pillow. He pulled her blanket up higher and kissed her forehead before quietly closing the door. In the kitchen, he put on coffee and found the pie from Mabel. The familiar tasks helped steady his nerves, but questions tumbled through his mind. Who had put Victoria in that cage? Why was she so afraid of the police? What kind of trouble had he brought to his daughter's doorstep? The bathroom door opened, and Victoria emerged wearing the sweatpants and Joe's all-night diner t-shirt he'd left outside the door. She'd washed away the mascara streaks, and her dark hair fell in damp waves past her shoulders. Without the evening gown and makeup, she looked younger, more vulnerable, but no less elegant. The coffee smells wonderful, she said, settling onto a kitchen chair. Her fingers, cleaned of dirt, but still showing marks from the zip ties, wrapped. Around the mug, he offered. Marcus, before anything else, I need to tell you who I am. And then you can decide if you want me to leave. He sat across from her, sliding over a slice of pie. Whoever you are, you needed help. I don't regret that. Victoria took a deep breath. My full name is Victoria Blackwood, of the Blackwood Industries Blackwoods. She watched his face carefully. Does that mean anything to you? Marcus frowned. Then recognition dawned. The technology company, the one with all those clean energy patents. Among other things, my father founded it. When he died 3 years ago, I inherited controlling interest in the company. She sipped her coffee, which made me a target for certain people who thought they could persuade me to sign over my voting rights. The people who put you in that cage. She nodded. My own head of security arranged it. They were going to hold me until I agreed to their terms. Or until... She shuddered. Well, you can imagine. Marcus could imagine all too well. He'd seen enough crime in this neighborhood to know how ugly desperation could get. But this was different. This was corporate violence, the kind that happened in boardrooms and behind tinted windows. The SUV outside, he said. Your people or theirs? Theirs. They'll be watching all the obvious places. Police stations, hospitals, hotels. She set down her coffee. I should go. I've already put you and Emma in enough danger. And go where? In borrowed clothes, no money, no phone. Marcus shook his head. My wife always said I was stubborn. She'd say I'm being stubborn now, but she'd understand. You're staying at least until we can figure out something safer. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Why? You don't know me. I'm bringing nothing but trouble to your door. You have Emma to think about. I am thinking about Emma. Marcus's voice was quiet but firm. I'm thinking about what kind of example I set. When someone needs help, you help them. That's what Sarah and I always taught her. I'm not going to teach her otherwise now. A floorboard creaked, and they both turned to see Emma standing in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She wore her favorite space-themed pajamas, the ones with glow-in-the-dark stars. Dad? Her gaze moved to Victoria, curious but not afraid. Is everything okay? Marcus opened his arm, and Emma came to lean against his side. Everything's fine, sweetheart. This is Victoria. She needed a safe place to stay tonight. Emma studied. Victoria with the direct gaze of childhood. Your dress was pretty. I saw it when Mrs. Rodriguez carried it to the laundry room. It looks like the color of Neptune in my solar system model. Victoria smiled, and for the first time that night, the expression reached her eyes. I hear you're quite the astronomer. Your father told me about your science project. Want to see it? Emma straightened eagerly. I'm having trouble with Jupiter's great red spot, but the rings of Saturn turned out really good. Emma! Marcus started to protest, but Victoria cut in gently. I'd love to see it, but maybe in the morning. It's very late, and your father's... Right, you should be in bed. Emma nodded, stifling a yawn. Okay, but promise you'll look tomorrow? Dad's not very good at the technical stuff. Promise. Victoria held out her pinky finger solemnly. Emma linked her own with it, then hugged her father good night. After Emma had gone back to bed, silence settled over the kitchen. Victoria touched the pinky that had linked with Emma's, as if holding on to something precious. She's remarkable, she said softly. You and your wife did an amazing job. Sarah did the hard part. Marcus cleared their cups, needing to move. I'm just trying not to mess it up. You're not. Victoria stood, wrapping her arms around herself. Marcus, I think I need to tell you the rest. About why they want control of the company so badly. It's not just about money. There's something my father left in my care, something that could change everything, and if it falls into the wrong hands... A car door slammed outside. Victoria froze, then moved to the window, carefully peering past the curtain. The SUV is gone, she reported, but they'll be back. They always come back. Marcus joined her at the window, looking out at the quiet street where danger now lurked in every shadow. In the distance, more fireworks painted the sky, celebrating the approaching New Year. In just a few hours, this night would change to morning, but nothing would ever be quite the same again. Victoria couldn't sleep. The pull-out couch was more comfortable than the cage had been, but her mind raced with possibilities and dangers. Instead of tossing and turning, she sat cross-legged on the makeshift bed, watching Emma's solar system slowly rotate from where it hung by fishing line from the living room ceiling. The sound of soft footsteps made her tense until Marcus appeared from the kitchen, carrying 2 steaming mugs. Chamomile tea, he explained, offering her one. Sarah swore by it on sleepless nights. You miss her very much, Victoria observed, wrapping her fingers around the warm ceramic. Marcus settled into his worn armchair, the springs creaking softly. Every day, but especially on nights like this, when big decisions need making, he smiled faintly. She was always better at those than me. I'm not so sure about that. You made a pretty big decision tonight. That was different. That was just doing what needed doing. He sipped his tea, studying her over the rim. Want to tell me about what your father left in your care? Victoria's hands tightened on her mug. It's not just patents or technology. He was working on something revolutionary. Clean energy that could power entire cities for pennies. Energy that could reach remote villages, run hospitals, transform lives. She took a shaky breath. But in the wrong hands, it could also be weaponized. That's why he left it to me instead of the company. He knew there were people on the board who'd use it for military contracts, for profit instead of progress. And these people, they think if they control you, they control the technology. They know they do. The protocols, the formulas there, all in a secure server that only I can access. She set down her tea. Dad made sure of that before he died. He said to wait until I found people I could trust, people who'd use it the way it was meant to be used. Marcus absorbed this in silence, his face thoughtful. From down the hall came the soft sound of Emma turning in her sleep, and Victoria watched his eyes automatically turn toward his daughter's room, checking. You're a good father, she said softly. I see it in every little thing you do, the way you look at her door when she makes a sound, the way you work extra shifts to support her dreams, the way you taught her to help others, even strangers. I'm just trying my best. His voice was gruff with emotion. Like everyone else. Not like everyone else. Victoria leaned forward. Marcus, do you know what most people would have done tonight? They would have called the police or walked away or tried to negotiate some kind of reward. But you just helped, without question, without expectation. "Speaking of expectations," he said, clearly uncomfortable with her praise, "we should talk about tomorrow. You'll need clothes, a phone, some way to contact people you trust, if there are any left. There's my aunt in Boston. She's not involved with the company, but she has connections, resources." Victoria twisted her hands in her lap. "But I can't call her from here. They'll be monitoring her lines." A loud crash from the kitchen made them both jump. Victoria's heart raced until a guilty-looking Emma appeared, a box of cereal clutched to her chest. "Sorry," she whispered. "I got hungry, and I heard voices." Marcus shook his head, but his eyes were fond. "Midnight cereal raid, huh? I was quiet until I knocked over the tin with the spatulas." Emma's eyes darted to Victoria. "Want some frosted flakes? They're better than warm milk for sleeping." Victoria felt something warm unfurl in her chest at the simple offer. "You know what? I would love some frosted flakes." Soon they were all seated around the small kitchen table, sharing cereal from chipped bowls. Emma's science fair trophy, first place from last year, caught the dim light from its place of honor on the windowsill. "Tell me about your project," Victoria said, genuinely curious. "Your father mentioned you're having trouble with Jupiter?" Emma's face lit up. "The great red spot is hard to get right. It's supposed to be this huge storm that's been going on for hundreds of years, but my paint keeps making it look like Jupiter has chicken pox. I might be able to help with that. I used to paint as a hobby, learned some tricks about layering colors to create depth." "Really?" Emma's eyes widened. "Could you show me? Dad tries, but..." She shot her father an apologetic look. "But I'm better at cooking than crafts," Marcus finished with a chuckle. "No offense taken, kiddo." Victoria watched them, this father and daughter with their easy affection and shared jokes. Her own childhood had been privileged but lonely. Private schools, nannies, rare moments with her busy father. What would it have been like to have this? This simple love, these midnight cereal conversations. A siren wailed in the distance, and Victoria stiffened, but Emma just continued crunching her cereal, and Marcus remained relaxed. This was normal here, she realized. The night sounds of a working-class neighborhood were as familiar to them as board meetings and charity galas were to her. "We should all try to sleep," Marcus said eventually, noting Emma's drooping eyelids. "Tomorrow will be a long day." As Emma hugged her father goodnight, she hesitated, then gave Victoria a quick, shy hug too. "Thanks for wanting to help with Jupiter." After Emma had gone back to bed, Marcus began washing their bowls. Victoria watched him, this man who worked late shifts at a diner but taught his daughter to reach for the stars. "Marcus?" She waited until he turned. "Thank you, not just for tonight, but for showing me what family can be." He dried his hands on a faded dish towel. "Sarah used to say that family isn't about blood or money. It's about who feeds your soul when you're hungry." She sounds like she was very wise. She was. He smiled, a private smile full of memories. "Get some sleep, Victoria. Whatever comes tomorrow, we'll face it together." Back on the pull-out couch, Victoria listened to the quiet sounds of the apartment settling. A radiator clinked. Wind whispered at the windows, and somewhere a cat meowed in the alley below. Such ordinary sounds, yet somehow comforting. She thought of her vast penthouse apartment with its designer furniture and state-of-the-art security system. It had never felt as safe as this modest home with its chipped bowls and midnight cereal raids. As she finally drifted towards sleep, Victoria realized something that should have frightened her, but instead brought peace. She trusted these people. More than that, she was starting to care about them. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever her enemies planned, she would not let any harm come to this little family that had opened their hearts to a stranger in need. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was Emma's model solar system, slowly turning in the darkness, each handcrafted, planet finding its own path through space. Dawn crept through the windows, painting the apartment in shades of grey and gold. Victoria found Marcus in the kitchen, already dressed for the day in fresh work clothes, though his shift wouldn't start for hours. A familiar-looking photo album lay open on the table before him. "I couldn't sleep either," she said softly, sliding into the chair across from him. He turned the album so she could see. A younger Marcus grinned at the camera, his arm around a woman with Emma's eyes and smile. They stood in front of a small house, a sold sign visible in the background. "Our first home," Marcus explained. "We saved for 3 years to make the down payment. Lost it after the accident. Medical bills, you know how it goes." His finger traced the edge of the photograph. The insurance company found a loophole, pre-existing condition they said wasn't properly disclosed. Victoria felt anger rise in her chest. "That's terrible. Wasn't there anything you could do?" "Couldn't afford a lawyer good enough to fight their lawyers." He shrugged, but she saw the old pain in his eyes. Emma was 10. She needed stability more than she needed that house. "So we moved here, started over." Victoria reached for her own memory, pulling out one that she rarely shared. "When my mother died, my father threw himself into his work. The big house felt like a museum, everything perfect, untouchable, cold." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I used to sneak into the kitchen at night just to sit with our housekeeper while she did the accounting. Maria, she taught me to make hot chocolate from scratch." "Is she still around? Someone you could trust?" Victoria shook her head. "She retired 5 years ago, moved to Arizona to be near her grandchildren." A sad smile touched her lips. "Dad made sure she had a good pension at least. He wasn't a bad man, just a broken one. Grief does that," Marcus said quietly. "Breaks you into pieces. The trick is finding a way to put yourself back together that still leaves room for joy. Is that what you did? Had to? Emma needed me whole, or as close to it as I could manage." He closed the photo album gently. "Sarah and I used to talk about sending Emma to college. Had a savings account set up and everything. Most of it went to the medical bills, but I'm building it back up. Slower than I'd like, but she'll get there," Victoria said, with sudden, fierce conviction. "Marcus, if I make it through this, when I make it through this, I want to help, not charity," she added quickly, seeing his expression. "An investment in minds like Emma's, in futures that deserve a chance." "Victoria?" He hesitated. "That's generous, but you're proud." "I understand that. So let me tell you about my father's work, about what he really wanted to build. Not just clean energy, but opportunities, education, resources for communities that big corporations usually ignore." She leaned forward. "That's why they want to stop me. Not just for the military applications, but because true innovation, true change, threatens their profit margins." A soft noise from the doorway made them both turn. Emma stood there in her space pajamas, Jupiter's unfinished model cradled in her arms. "Dad?" Her voice was small. "Are we in trouble?" Marcus opened his arms, and she came to him, settling into his lap like she was much younger than 12. "No, sweetheart, we're helping someone who needs it. Remember what Mom always said?" "Courage isn't about being fearless," Emma recited. "It's about doing what's right even when you're scared." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. Sarah's wisdom, living on through her daughter, seemed to fill the kitchen like morning light. "Your mother was very smart," she told Emma, "and so are you. That's why this is important, because bright minds like yours should have every chance to change the world." Emma studied Victoria with those wise young eyes. "Is that why bad people put you in a cage? Because you want to help people?" "Emma," Marcus started, but Victoria held up a hand. "It's okay." She met Emma's gaze directly. "Yes, some people think helping others means they'll have less for themselves. They don't understand that kindness multiplies. Like stars, each one makes the night sky brighter." Emma nodded solemnly. "Like the Fibonacci sequence, each number is the sum of the 2 numbers that came before it. It keeps growing bigger and bigger, exactly like that." Victoria smiled, impressed. "Did you learn about Fibonacci in school?" "No, Mom taught me. She said it was everywhere in nature, in shells and flowers and the way trees grow." Emma's fingers traced patterns on the table. Sometimes when I miss her a lot, I write out the sequence. It helps me remember that good things can keep growing even after sad things happen. Marcus pressed a kiss to his daughter's hair, his eyes suspiciously bright. Victoria looked away, giving them privacy in their shared grief. Her gaze fell on a small plant in the window, some kind of succulent, its spiral pattern exactly the kind of natural mathematics Emma had described. "I was 11 when my mother died," Victoria said softly. "Cancer, fast and aggressive. By the time they caught it, there wasn't much they could do." She touched one of the succulent's leaves gently. "That's part of why Dad's work was so important. To him, he wanted to create energy sources for hospitals in places where power isn't reliable, where early detection equipment is too expensive to run continuously." "Did he finish?" Emma asked. "Before he died, almost. He left me the key to completing it. Not just the technical specifications, but the wisdom to use it right." Victoria turned back to them. "He told me to wait until I found people with the right hearts. People who understood that true progress lifts everyone up." Marcus shifted. Emma gently to her own chair and stood, moving to the coffee maker. The familiar routine of measuring grounds and water gave him time to think. "These people hunting you," he said finally, "they're powerful? Very. Corporate executives, politicians, military contractors." Victoria accepted the mug he offered. "They have resources I can't match alone. But you're not alone anymore," Emma said with simple certainty. "Right, Dad?" Marcus looked between his daughter and this woman who had brought danger to their door, and with it, perhaps, a chance to make a real difference in the world. Sarah would know what to do. Sarah always knew. Then he remembered her voice. Clear as yesterday, life's biggest opportunities often come disguised as impossible choices. "Emma's right," he said. "You're not alone. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Outside, the city was waking up. Traffic noise grew steadily, and somewhere nearby, a church bell tolled the hour. A new day was beginning, one that would test their newfound alliance in ways none of them could predict. But for now, in this quiet kitchen with its growing light and shared stories, they were just three people finding unexpected comfort in each other's company. Three lives intersecting like lines in a complex equation, creating something new and uncharted in the space between loss and hope. The morning sun had fully risen when Victoria noticed Marcus checking his watch for the third time. "You have to work today," she realized aloud. "I should call in," he began. But Victoria shook her head. "No. We need to maintain normal routines. Anyone watching will get suspicious if you suddenly break pattern." She straightened in her chair. "Besides, I've been thinking about your diner, about this neighborhood, about what my father's legacy could mean for communities like this." Emma had gone to shower and dress for school, leaving them alone in the kitchen. Marcus refilled their coffee cups, waiting. "The technology my father developed, it's not just about power generation. It's about empowerment." Victoria's eyes lit with purpose. "What if we started here? This neighborhood needs a community center, doesn't it? Somewhere kids could go after school, somewhere parents could find resources and support." Marcus set down his cup carefully. "Victoria, that's generous, but you're talking about millions of dollars." "I'm talking about investment in human potential." She leaned forward. "Think about it. Clean, nearly free energy powering a center with computer labs, tutoring spaces, job training facilities. A place where single parents could find childcare while they work or study. Where kids like Emma could have access to advanced science equipment." "It sounds like a dream," Marcus said softly. "But your enemies would never look for me in a community development project." Victoria smiled. "They're expecting me to run to luxury hotels, to private islands, places they can monitor. They'd never understand choosing to stay and build something meaningful. But why here? Why us? Because you showed me something I'd forgotten existed. Genuine kindness without agenda. Because Emma reminds me of myself. Yet her age, full of curiosity and dreams. Because, she hesitated, because I think this is what my father meant about finding the right people. Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood he'd called home since losing the house. Kids walked to school in small groups, parents hurried to bus stops, elderly residents carried shopping bags from the corner store. A community of people doing their best with what they had. Sarah and I used to talk about something like this, he said finally. A place where parents wouldn't have to choose between working and watching their kids, where people could learn new skills, better themselves. He turned back to Victoria. But it's dangerous. These people trying to stop you, they won't just give up. No, they won't. Victoria's voice was steel. But that's exactly why we have to try. They're counting on fear keeping people isolated, keeping communities from reaching their full potential. She stood and joined him at the window. Look out there, Marcus. How many brilliant minds are we wasting because they don't have resources? How many Emmas are giving up on their dreams because the odds seem too high? A knock at the door made them both tense, but it was only Mrs. Rodriguez, right on schedule to walk Emma to school. "Buenos dias," she called, then stopped short, seeing Victoria still there. Her eyes moved between them questioningly. Marcus made a quick decision. "Mrs. Rodriguez, could you come in for a moment? There's something we'd like to discuss with you." The elderly woman settled into a kitchen chair, declining coffee but accepting a piece of leftover pie. Victoria sat across from her, and Marcus saw her subtly straighten her posture, slipping into what must be her professional demeanor. "Mrs. Rodriguez, how long have you lived in this neighborhood?" Victoria asked. 43 years. Pride colored her voice. "Raised my children here, now help raise their children when they need it." "And in those years, what's the biggest change you've seen? What does the community need most?" Mrs. Rodriguez didn't hesitate. "Hope. When I first came, people believed things could get better. Now," she shrugged, "young ones see no future here. Parents work 2-3 jobs just to stand still. Is not right." Victoria leaned forward. "What if we could change that, create a place where children could be safe after school, where parents could learn new job skills, where the community could grow stronger together?" Many promise such things. Mrs. Rodriguez's tone was skeptical but not unkind. "Politicians, developers, all talk, no action." "I'm not a politician, Mrs. Rodriguez. I'm someone who believes in action." Victoria glanced at Marcus, then continued. "Someone who believes that every community deserves a chance to thrive." Emma appeared in the doorway, backpack ready. "Can Victoria come see my science fair project after school?" The adults exchanged looks. It wasn't safe for Victoria to stay here much longer, but none of them wanted to dim the hope in Emma's eyes. "We'll see, mi amor," Mrs. Rodriguez said smoothly, standing. "Come now, you'll be late." After they'd gone, Marcus checked his watch again. "I need to leave for work soon. Victoria, you can't stay here alone. It's not safe." "I know." She pulled a business card from her borrowed sweatpants. She must have retrieved it from her evening gown. "This is my aunt's private number in Boston. Not the one they're monitoring. I can trust her, and she has resources we'll need. But first, we need to get you somewhere secure." Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "I know someone, an ex-military buddy who runs a security firm. He's solid, trustworthy." Victoria touched his arm gently. "Marcus, before we do anything else, I need to know, are you really willing to take this on? Not just hiding me, but everything else, the community center, the changes it would bring, the risks." He thought of Sarah, of her dreams for their community, of Emma's brilliant mind and all the other children like her who just needed a chance, of Victoria's courage in choosing to stay and fight rather than run. "Someone once told me that the biggest opportunities come disguised as impossible choices," he said. "I choose this. I choose to help build something that matters." Victoria's smile was like sunrise. "Then let's get started. But first..." She glanced down at her borrowed clothes. "I think I need something more professional than a diner t-shirt if we're going to revolutionize the neighborhood. For the first time since finding her in that cage, Marcus laughed. The sound seemed to fill the small kitchen with possibility. Neither of them noticed the black SUV that cruised slowly past the building, its tinted windows concealing watchful eyes. The game was about to change, and the stakes were higher than either of them knew. The diner was unusually quiet for a weekday morning. Marcus wiped down the counter for the third time, his mind elsewhere, when Mabel's sharp intake of breath made him look up. A man in an expensive suit had settled onto a stool, his presence as out of place as a peacock in a chicken coop. "Coffee black," the man said, placing a thick envelope on the counter. "And a moment of your time, Mr. Thompson." Marcus felt his shoulders tense. He poured the coffee with steady hands, though his heart hammered against his ribs. "I'm listening." "My employers are concerned about a mutual friend." The man's smile never reached his eyes. "Ms. Blackwood has been under considerable stress lately. We're worried about her mental state." "Never met her," Marcus said flatly, continuing to wipe the counter. The man slid the envelope forward. $500,000, cash, enough to send your daughter to any college she dreams of. All we need is a phone call when Ms. Blackwood makes contact." From the kitchen, Mabel dropped a pan with a clatter. The man didn't flinch. "Like I said," Marcus repeated, "never met her. Mr. Thompson." The man's voice hardened. "You have a bright daughter. It would be a shame if anything interfered with her education. Accidents happen in neighborhoods like this." Marcus's hand tightened on his cleaning cloth. Before he could respond, the diner's door chimed. Two large men entered, their bulk failing to hide the military precision of their movements. But it was the woman between them who drew every eye. She was in her 60s, elegantly dressed, her silver hair swept into a classic chignon. She surveyed the diner with the air of someone accustomed to command. "Richard," she said sharply, "are you threatening my employee?" The man in the suit stood quickly. "Mrs. Blackwood Pierce, we weren't expecting—" "Evidently not." Victoria's aunt approached the counter. "Mr. Thompson, I believe you're due for a break. Shall we talk?" In the diner's back office, really more of a storage closet with a desk, Margaret Blackwood Pierce wasted no time. "Victoria contacted me this morning. She's safe? For now." Marcus glanced through the tiny window. The suit, Richard, and his associates had vanished. "But they're escalating." "Indeed." Margaret's face softened. "She told me about your daughter, about what you did for Victoria. Not many would have shown such courage." "It wasn't courage. It was just—" He trailed off as she raised a hand. "It was exactly courage, the quiet kind that changes lives." She placed a business card on the desk. "I've arranged secure accommodation. My people will protect your daughter while you're at work. And this," she set down a phone, "is untraceable. Victoria's number is programmed in. Why are you helping us? After what happened to Victoria, can anyone in her family be trusted?" Margaret's eyes flashed. "I've spent 30 years building one of the most effective private security firms in the country. Why? Because I watched my brother's board of directors slowly corrupt everything he built. I couldn't fight them openly. They had too much leverage. But I could prepare, build resources, wait." A knock at the door interrupted them. Mabel peered in, her face worried. "Marcus, Emma's school is on the line. She never arrived this morning." The world seemed to tilt. Marcus grabbed the desk for support, but Margaret was already moving, phone to her ear. "Team 2, activate. Find the Rodriguez woman and the girl." She turned to Marcus. "When did they leave?" 8:15. "Mrs. Rodriguez always takes her straight to—" His voice caught. "We'll find her." Margaret's tone was steel. Richard's threat wasn't random. They've been watching, waiting for leverage. Her fingers flew over her phone. "Victoria needs to know." Marcus pulled out the phone she'd given him, but his hands shook too badly to dial. Margaret gently took it from him, made the connection. "Marcus?" Victoria's voice was tense. "I just heard. My people are already moving. Trust Margaret. She's the one who taught me everything I know about contingency planning. I should have known they'd target her." His voice was raw. "I should have—" "Stop. This isn't your fault. It's theirs, and they'll pay for it. Victoria paused. Do you remember what Emma said about the Fibonacci sequence? About good things growing from painful beginnings. We're going to make that true. Today. A text lit up Margaret's phone. She read it and nodded sharply. Mrs. Rodriguez is safe. They left her unconscious in the park, but she's already awake and talking. Says 3 men in a white van took Emma. Marcus felt rage replace fear, cold and clarifying. They'll want to arrange a trade, Emma for Victoria. Yes, Margaret said, and we're going to give them exactly what they expect. Just not quite the way they expect it. Marcus, Victoria's voice was quiet but determined. Remember how I said my father left me more than just technology? Some of what he left? Some of it was less about innovation and more about protection. Fail-safes, he called them, against exactly this kind of situation. What are you saying? I'm saying it's time to show them why my father trusted me with his legacy. But I need you to trust me too, completely. Through the tiny window, Marcus could see Mabel directing customers out of the diner, locking the door, flipping the sign to closed. In his mind, he saw Emma working on her science project, heard her voice explaining the mathematics of star formations. His daughter, who contained galaxies of potential. I trust you, he said. Tell me what you need me to do. Margaret was already laying out papers on the desk. Blueprints, security protocols, access codes. Outside, black SUVs with tinted windows were quietly surrounding the diner. But these weren't the enemy's vehicles. These belonged to people who'd spent years preparing for this moment. Victoria, Marcus said suddenly, when this is over, that community center we talked about, let's build it in Sarah's name. There was a pause. Then Victoria's voice came back strong and clear. No, in Emma's name, because she's going to help us run it. For the first time since hearing Emma was missing, Marcus felt hope stir. They had resources now, allies. And most importantly, they had a reason to win that went beyond survival. Somewhere in the city, his daughter was scared, but probably already calculating angles of escape, applying the mathematics she loved to the problem of staying alive. He had to believe that, had to believe that Sarah's spirit and his determination had given Emma the tools she needed until they could reach her. Margaret laid out the first phase of their plan, and Marcus felt the familiar rhythm of preparation settle over him. He hadn't always been just a diner worker. There were skills from his past, skills he'd hoped never to use again, that were about to become very relevant. Time to move, Margaret said, checking her watch. Are you ready? Marcus thought of the man in the suit, so confident in his power to threaten a child's future. Thought of the look that would replace that confidence when he realized exactly who and what he was dealing with. Ready, he said, and meant it. Margaret's safe house turned out to be a converted warehouse in the industrial district, its unremarkable exterior hiding a high-tech command center. Victoria was waiting for them, wearing clothes that must have come from her aunt's emergency. Supplies, a simple black pantsuit that made her look both professional and formidable. Mrs. Rodriguez is resting in medical, she said as they entered. No serious injuries, but they want to monitor her for concussion. She touched Marcus's arm gently. She's blaming herself. Not her fault, Marcus said roughly. None of this is anyone's fault except the people who took my daughter. A wall of monitors dominated the main room, displaying security camera feeds, maps, and streams of data. A dozen operators worked at stations, their quiet professionalism speaking of military or intelligence backgrounds. Your daughter is extremely clever, Margaret said, leading them to a central planning table. She's left us breadcrumbs. She pulled up footage from a traffic camera. There was Emma being led into a white van, but as she went, she deliberately dropped something that glinted in the morning sun. Victoria zoomed in on the image. Is that Jupiter? Marcus said, his throat tight. From her science project. The great red spot we could never get right. She's telling us she's keeping her head, Victoria said softly. Thinking clearly like a scientist. A technician approached with a tablet. "We've tracked the van's route through 17 camera positions. They're heading toward the waterfront district." "Makes sense," Margaret nodded. "Lots of empty warehouses, easy water access if they need to move quickly." She turned to Victoria. "You mentioned your father's fail-safes. What exactly are we working with?" Victoria moved to a secure terminal, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "Dad knew something like this might happen. He built back doors into every system Blackwood Industries ever developed, including their security infrastructure. Screens filled with technical data, building schematics, security protocols. They're holding her here," Victoria pointed to a warehouse complex. "I can access their internal cameras. Now, new feeds appeared, showing armed men patrolling corridors. And there, in a central office, sat Emma. She wasn't bound. They obviously thought a 12-year-old posed no threat, but 2 guards watched her constantly. She appeared to be drawing something." Marcus leaned closer. "She's mapping the building layout," he said with a mix of pride and worry. "Using the time-telling method I taught her." At their questioning looks, he explained, "When she was younger and scared of getting lost, I taught her to think of buildings like clock faces. Map the exits, count the steps between points. She's doing it now. See how she keeps checking her watch? She's measuring intervals, creating a mental map." "Brilliant girl," Margaret murmured. "She's doing our recon for us." She turned to Victoria. "What else did your father leave you?" "Control of their power systems, for one thing, and their communications." Victoria's smile was sharp. "They think they're dealing with a socialite who inherited her father's company. They don't know he spent years teaching me every aspect of the business, including how to fight back." A young operator raised her hand. "Ms. Blackwood, we're intercepting their communications. They're planning to contact Mr. Thompson within the hour to arrange the exchange." "Good." Margaret spread building plans across the table. "Then we have time to set our own terms." She looked at Marcus. "You had military training?" He nodded slowly. "Force recon. Before Emma was born. Never thought I'd need those skills again." "Life has a way of circling back," Margaret said. "Victoria told me about your community center idea, about building something that matters." She met his eyes. "Sometimes we have to fight for the right to build." Victoria joined them at the table, standing close enough that her shoulder brushed Marcus's. The contact anchored him, reminded him he wasn't alone in this fight. "When they call," she said, "they'll expect desperation. A father willing to trade anything for his daughter. What they won't expect is us having the advantage." One of the screens showed Emma, now apparently working on her science fair presentation. But Marcus recognized the way she kept glancing at the doors, windows, air vents, mapping, planning, trusting that help was coming. "She's so much like Sarah," he said quietly, "always thinking, always observing. After we lost the house, she made spreadsheets of apartment listings. 12 years old, and she's teaching herself calculus because she read that NASA engineers need it." Victoria's hand found his, squeezed gently. "When this is over, we're going to build her that community center. With a proper science lab, advanced math programs, everything she needs to reach the stars. First we need to get her back." Margaret reminded them, but her eyes were soft as she watched their clasped hands. A technician called out, "Incoming call on Mr. Thompson's cell." They gathered around the communications station. Margaret nodded to Marcus. "Remember, let them think they have the upper hand. Victoria, are you ready?" Victoria's fingers flew over her keyboard, activating subroutines her father had hidden in the company's systems years ago. "Ready. Every word they speak will tell." It was more about their position. Marcus took a deep breath and answered his phone. "Thompson." "Ah, Mr. Thompson." It was Richard, the man from the diner. "I trust you've had time to reconsider our offer. The terms have changed slightly, of course." "Where's my daughter?" "Safe. For now. She's quite impressive, you know. Spent the morning explaining astronomical phenomena to my men. Quite the little scientist." Marcus's free hand clenched, but his voice remained steady. "What do you want?" A simple exchange. Miss Blackwood for your daughter. 1 hour, Pier 17. Come alone. Well, with Miss Blackwood, of course. Any sign of police or private security, and... He let the threat hang. Let me speak to Emma. There was a pause. Then Emma's voice. Dad, I'm okay. They don't know about Mom's clock trick. The line went dead. But Emma's message was clear. She had mapped the building, found the weaknesses. His brilliant, brave girl. Victoria was already moving, correlating data streams. Pier 17 is a distraction. The call came from the warehouse district. They're not planning to move her. No, Marcus agreed. They expect us to walk into an ambush while they keep Emma as insurance. Margaret's smile was predatory. Then let's give them exactly what they expect. Victoria, already on it. Dad's fail-safes are better than they could have imagined. Her fingers never stopped moving across the keyboard. When the moment comes, they'll learn why he trusted me with everything. Around them, Margaret's team moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for battle. But in the midst of the activity, Marcus felt Victoria's hand slip into his again. I never thanked you properly, she said softly, for saving me from that cage. Thank me by helping me save Emma. By helping us build something that means other parents never have to face choices like this. Deal. Her eyes held his, full of determination and something deeper, something neither of them was ready to name. Now let's go get your daughter back. On the monitors, Emma continued her careful observation of her prison, unaware that an army of allies was preparing to demonstrate just how much one act of kindness could set in motion. The next hour would change everything for all of them. The waterfront air carried the bite of winter as Marcus and Victoria approached Pier 17. She wore her original evening gown, carefully cleaned and pressed, the image they would expect. Marcus had changed into a security guard's uniform, playing the role of a desperate father, trying to protect his supposed wealthy employer. Remember, Margaret's voice came through their concealed earpieces. We only need to hold their attention for 7 minutes. My teams are already in position at the warehouse. Victoria's hand trembled slightly as she checked her phone. Dad's systems are ready. One command and their entire security grid goes dark. 3 black SUVs waited at the end of the pier. Richard emerged from the middle one, still wearing his suit despite the cold. 4 armed men flanked him. Miss Blackwood, he called. So good to see you well. We were quite concerned. I'm sure you were. Victoria's voice dripped aristocratic disdain. Shall we dispense with the pretense? Where is Emma Thompson? Richard smiled thinly. Safe, and she'll remain that way as long as you cooperate. The board has some documents requiring your immediate attention. From their earpieces came a quiet update. Teams in position, beginning warehouse approach. Marcus shifted his weight, deliberately telegraphing anxiety. Let them think he was just a worried father, out of his depth. The documents, Victoria said. They wouldn't happen to relate to my father's clean energy projects, would they? Among other things. Richard gestured to the SUV. Shall we discuss the details somewhere more comfortable? First, show us proof Emma is alive. Marcus let his voice crack. Please. Richard sighed as if disappointed by such distrust. He nodded to one of his men who held up a phone. On the screen, Emma sat at a desk, still working on what appeared to be her science project. The timestamp caught Marcus's eye. That's from an hour ago, he growled. Very observant. Richard's facade of politeness cracked. But you're not in a position to make demands. Miss Blackwood, the car, now. Through their earpieces, warehouse security detecting our presence. 60 seconds to contact. Victoria stepped forward, her posture regal. You know, Richard, my father used to say something interesting about power. Not electrical power, though that was certainly his expertise. He talked about the power of preparation. The first sign something was wrong came from Richard's earpiece. A burst of static, then silence. He touched it, frowning. He spent years preparing, Victoria continued, her voice growing stronger. Building backdoors into every system, every security protocol, every piece of technology Blackwood Industries ever created. Want to know why? The pier's security lights flickered and died. In the distance, car alarms began blaring. "What is this?" Richard demanded, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. "This," Victoria said, "is what happens when you threaten the wrong people." Through their earpieces, "Warehouse breached. Forces engaging." Richard's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went pale. "How did you—" "My father taught me everything," Victoria cut him off, "including how to fight back. Your men at the warehouse are currently discovering that all their security systems have turned against them. Doors sealing randomly, cameras blind, communications dead." Marcus stepped forward, dropping the anxious father act. His stance shifted, subtly, and Richard's men suddenly seemed to realize they weren't dealing with a simple diner worker. "See, that's the thing about people like you," Marcus said conversationally. "You think money equals power. You never consider that a 12-year-old girl might be smarter than you, that a woman you dismissed as a socialite might understand your systems better than you do, that a diner worker might have skills you never imagined." Through their earpieces, "Primary target secured. Emma is safe. Repeat, Emma is safe." Victoria's smile was fierce. "Check your phone, Richard. I think you'll find some interesting notifications from the SEC. Amazing what kind of evidence my father's backdoors let me gather. Insider trading, illegal weapons deals, corporate espionage." "You're bluffing," Richard snarled, but his hands shook as he pulled out his phone. "Am I? Oh, look. The press is already picking up the story. Amazing how fast news travels these days." Headlights swept the pier as Margaret's vehicles surrounded them. Richard's men raised their weapons, but found themselves targeted by twice as many. "Speaking of news," Victoria added, "I believe your board members are about to have a very interesting emergency meeting. Something about a complete security breach and federal investigations." Richard lunged for her, but Marcus was faster. In one smooth motion, he disarmed the man and pinned him to the ground. "Force recon," he explained to Richard's startled face. "Not just a diner worker after all." Margaret emerged from one of the vehicles, phone to her ear. "Federal agents are moving on all identified conspirators. Victoria, your father would be proud. Marcus, there's someone here who wants to see you." Emma ran from the car, launching herself into her father's arms. "Dad, did you see? I mapped the whole building just like you taught me. And I kept thinking about Mom's Fibonacci numbers, about how good things can grow from bad situations, and I knew you'd come." Marcus held her tight, his heart thundering. She smelled of dust and metal and determination. His brilliant, brave girl. Victoria knelt beside them, her expensive gown pooling on the dirty pier. "Emma, you were amazing, and I believe I promised to help with that Jupiter model." Emma's eyes lit up. "Really? Even after all this?" "Especially after all this." Victoria looked at Marcus. "I meant what I said about the community center, about building something that matters." Margaret's teams were securing Richard and his men. In the distance, police lights approached, the legitimate authorities arriving to handle the aftermath. "What happens now?" Emma asked, still holding tight to her father. Marcus looked at Victoria, saw his own hope reflected in her eyes. Now we build something good, something that grows like your Fibonacci numbers." "Starting with getting that science fair project finished," Victoria added. "I hear the Great Red Spot is giving you trouble." Emma laughed, the sound carrying across the water like music. Above them, stars emerged from behind winter clouds, ancient light reaching down to touch this moment of ending and beginning. The pier lights flickered back on, illuminating an odd group. A billionaire heiress in an evening gown, a diner worker with hidden strengths, and a young girl who'd used mathematics to map her way home. Behind them, Margaret directed her teams with quiet efficiency, proof that sometimes the best allies are the ones who worked in shadow, waiting for the right moment to act. Tomorrow would bring challenges, explanations to be made, a community center to be planned, a future to be built. But for now, they stood together in the cold air, three people whose lives had tangled like equations, resolving into an unexpected answer. And somewhere, Marcus thought, Sarah was smiling. The safe house felt different in victory. The tension had dissolved, replaced by the quiet hum of computers and the soft murmur of Margaret's teams coordinating with federal authorities. Emma sat cross-legged on a comfortable chair, her rescued Jupiter model in her lap, while Victoria showed her how to layer paint to create the perfect storm effect. See? If you build up the reds gradually, adding just a touch of brown at the edges. Victoria demonstrated on a spare piece of styrofoam. The depth makes it look more realistic. Marcus watched them from the doorway, a cup of coffee warming his hands. The events of the day felt almost dreamlike, but the sight of his daughter, safe, absorbed in her project, made everything worth it. She's quite remarkable, Margaret said, joining him. Both of them, actually. She handed him a tablet displaying news headlines. Blackwood Industries scandal exposed. Corporate conspiracy unveiled. Federal agents raid board members' homes. Victoria's father built better safeguards than they ever imagined, Margaret continued. But it took someone with Victoria's courage to use them properly. She smiled softly. And someone with your heart to show her why it mattered. Mrs. Rodriguez had insisted on cooking for everyone, turning the safe house's industrial kitchen into a warm, fragrant space filled with the smell of her legendary chicken soup. She'd refused to go home, declaring that families stayed together in times of crisis, and somehow over the course of this extraordinary day they had become just that, family. "Dad?" Emma called. "Come look at Jupiter. Victoria showed me how to make it look like it's actually spinning." He joined them, marveling at the transformation of the troublesome planet. The great red spot, now swirled with subtle variations of color, looking remarkably like the astronomical photographs Emma loved. "It's beautiful," he said. "Your mum would have loved it." "She does love it," Emma said with quiet certainty. "She helped us find each other, didn't she? Like her mathematics, everything connecting in the right pattern." Victoria blinked rapidly, and Marcus noticed she still had a small smudge of red paint on her cheek. Without thinking, he reached out to brush it away. Their eyes met, held. "Marcus," she said softly, "there's something we should discuss, about the future." But before she could continue, one of Margaret's operators called out, "Ms. Blackwood, the board's emergency meeting is starting. They're trying to hold a vote to maintain control." Victoria straightened, her expression hardening. "Not for long." She squeezed Emma's shoulder. "Keep working on Jupiter. I need to go remind some people about the true meaning of power." They watched on the main screens as Victoria, still in her evening gown, connected remotely to the board meeting. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Gentlemen, I believe you'll find your voting capabilities have been suspended, along with much of your electronic access, a temporary security measure, you understand." Emma tugged at Marcus's sleeve. "Is Victoria going to be okay?" "More than okay," he assured her. "She's showing them what real strength looks like." Indeed, Victoria was magnificent. One by one, she presented evidence of their crimes, stripped away their illusions of control, and laid out exactly how her father had prepared for this day. "The company will be restructured," she informed them, "with a new focus on community development and accessible technology. I believe my father's clean energy project will work beautifully for powering community centers." Her eyes met Marcus's through the screen. "Starting in neighborhoods that need it most." When it was done, when the board had been effectively neutralized, and federal investigators were moving in, Victoria rejoined them. She looked tired but triumphant. "Well," she said, "that's one problem solved. Now about that community center." Mrs. Rodriguez appeared with bowls of soup, interrupting her. "First you eat, all of you. Plans can wait until after food." They gathered around a break-room table. Marcus, Emma, Victoria, Margaret, and Mrs. Rodriguez, an unlikely family, brought together by chance and choice and courage. I was thinking, Emma said between spoonfuls, about what we should name the community center. Oh, Victoria raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? The Sarah Thompson Center for Scientific Discovery. Emma stirred her soup thoughtfully. Because Mom always said that learning was about discovering yourself as much as discovering facts. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Victoria's hand found his under the table. I think that's perfect, she said. And I think we should start with a state-of-the-art science lab, maybe even a small observatory. Really? Emma's eyes shone. Could we really? Of course. Victoria smiled. After all, someone needs to teach the next generation about the mathematics of star formations. As they talked about plans and possibilities, Marcus looked around the table. His daughter was safe. The future was opening up like a flower. And beside him sat a woman who had chosen to build rather than run, to create rather than hide. Sarah would have liked her, he thought, would have appreciated her spirit, her determination to make the world better. Outside, the winter day was turning to dusk. Soon they would need to deal with practical matters, statements to police, papers to sign, plans to formalize. But for now, they shared soup and dreams, while somewhere above them, Jupiter turned. In its eternal dance, its great storm a swirl of red against the cosmic dark. As night settled over the safe house, the true scope of the conspiracy began to emerge. Margaret's analysts worked through layers of encrypted data that Victoria's father had secretly collected over years, projecting key findings onto the main screen. It goes deeper than the board, Victoria said, her face illuminated by the blue glow of monitors. Look at these transfer patterns. Someone was funneling research data to military contractors long before my father died. Marcus studied the complex web of transactions, his years of military experience lending insight. These aren't just any contractors. These are black ops specialists, the kind that develop weapons that officially don't exist. Emma had fallen. Asleep on a nearby couch, Jupiter cradled in her arms. Mrs. Rodriguez sat beside her, crocheting what looked like the beginning of a blanket, but her sharp eyes missed nothing. There, Margaret pointed to a name buried in the data, Robert Blackwood Pierce. Victoria went very still. Uncle Robert, but he died in that plane crash 5 years ago. No. Margaret's voice was heavy with old pain. He didn't. She pulled up a passport scan. He's been living in Montenegro, directing this operation from the shadows, my own brother, corrupting everything our family built. Marcus watched Victoria absorb this betrayal, saw her hands clench into fists. He was the one who suggested I join the board, who encouraged me to take a more active role in the company. He was positioning me as a puppet, Margaret finished. With you in control, they could access your father's clean energy technology, weaponize it. The kidnapping was just their backup plan when you proved less malleable than expected. But why? Victoria's voice cracked. Why would he betray his own family? Power, Mrs. Rodriguez said suddenly, her crochet needles clicking steadily. Men like that, they see family as just another resource to use, like your father's invention. A small sound made them turn. Emma was awake, watching them with those wise young eyes, like the people who wouldn't help Mom, who cared more about money than helping her get better. Marcus moved to sit beside her, drawing her close. Sometimes people make choices that hurt others because they're afraid of not having enough. They forget that real wealth isn't about money. It's about what you build, Victoria said softly, what you create to help others. She squared her shoulders. Which is exactly why we're going to stop them, all of them. She moved to a terminal, fingers flying over keys. Dad didn't just leave me back doors into the company's systems, he left me evidence. Everything Robert and his conspirators did, every deal, every betrayal, it's all here waiting to be revealed. Margaret's phone buzzed. Her face hardened as she read the message. Robert knows we're onto him. He's trying to access emergency protocols to wipe the servers. Let him try. Victoria's smile was fierce. Dad thought of that too. Every attempt to delete data just creates more secure copies. She looked at Marcus. Your military experience. Could you help analyze these weapon design documents? We need to understand exactly what they were planning to build. For the next hour, they worked together, unraveling years of deception. Emma insisted on helping, her mathematical mind spotting patterns in the data that others missed. Even Mrs. Rodriguez contributed, her decades of observing human nature, helping them understand the personal dynamics behind the conspiracy. There, Victoria said finally, sending the last packet of evidence to federal authorities. It's done. Robert and his entire network exposed. Not quite done, Margaret corrected, studying her phone. He's on a private jet, trying to leave Montenegro. But, she smiled grimly, let's just say certain authorities are very interested in having a conversation with him when he lands. What happens to the company now? Emma asked, stifling a yawn. Victoria looked around at these people who had become her unlikely saviors and family. Now we rebuild it. Not as a weapon, but as a tool for change. Starting with your mother's community center. Our community center, Marcus corrected gently. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Victoria saw her future reshaping itself, not as the isolated heiress her uncle had tried to manipulate, but as part of something larger, something built on trust and courage and the simple choice to help others. Our community center, she agreed, the first of many. Outside, the night was giving way to dawn, painting the sky in shades of promise. Inside, surrounded by evidence of past betrayals, they began planning for a future built on better foundations. Family foundations, Emma would say later. Like her, beloved Fibonacci sequence, each number supporting the next, growing endlessly toward light. The diner buzzed with unusual energy for a weekday morning. Regular customers mingled with corporate lawyers, community organizers sat beside federal agents, and at the center of it all, Mabel served coffee with her usual unflappable efficiency. "More coffee, Miss Blackwood?" she asked, already pouring. "You look like you could use it." Victoria smiled gratefully, taking a break from the documents spread across her usual booth. In the week since the conspiracy's exposure, she'd practically moved into Joe's all-night diner, transforming it into an unofficial headquarters for their community center project. "These zoning regulations," she sighed, pushing a paper toward Marcus as he slid in across from her, "they're designed to discourage exactly the kind of development we're planning." "That's where I can help," said Carmen Rodriguez, Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter and a city council member. "Mom told me what you did for Emma. Consider me your ally in the bureaucratic trenches." At the counter, Emma held court with her science. Unfair project, now complete with a perfectly rendered Jupiter. A local reporter scribbled notes as she explained the mathematics behind planetary orbits, while two NASA engineers who'd read about her ordeal nodded approvingly. "Your daughter's become quite the celebrity," Victoria observed. Marcus watched Emma gesture enthusiastically about celestial mechanics. "She's handling it better than I am. Yesterday, a university called about their youth science program." Speaking of programs, Victoria pulled out a fresh set of plans. "I've been thinking about the center's educational focus. Not just science and math, but practical skills too. Computer training, business classes, trade certifications. Like a bridge," Marcus said thoughtfully, "between education and opportunity." The diner's bell chimed as Margaret entered, bringing a blast of cold air and news from the international front. Robert's arrest is official. Montenegro authorities were quite cooperative once they understood the scope of his activities. Victoria absorbed this with a slight nod. The betrayal still stung, but she'd chosen to focus on building rather than dwelling on destruction. "The board members are scrambling to make deals," Margaret continued, accepting coffee from Mabel, each one trying to be the first to turn evidence. "Victoria, they're going to try to paint you as too inexperienced to run the company. Let them try." Victoria's voice was steel. "While they're playing corporate games, we'll be actually changing lives." She gestured to where Tony, the young dishwasher, was explaining his community college challenges to a corporate lawyer who specialized in educational funding. Connections were forming, bridges being built. Miss Blackwood? It was Mrs. Henderson, one of the diner's regulars. My sister runs a women's shelter downtown. I told her about your plans for the center. She has some ideas about programming for single mothers. And so it went, all morning long. People flowing in and out of the diner, offering help, sharing. Needs, weaving their hopes into the growing plan. The community wasn't just supporting their vision, they were helping to shape it. It's happening, Emma said, sliding into the booth beside her father. Just like Mom's Fibonacci sequence, each person bringing in more people, everything growing bigger and better. Victoria reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Your mother would be so proud of you. Of all of this, Marcus watched them. These two brilliant women who had changed his life so completely. One carrying her father's legacy of innovation, the other carrying her mother's legacy of understanding. Both helping to build something extraordinary. The contractors can start next week, Carmen was saying, reviewing permits. The old factory site is perfect. Good bones, central location, plenty of parking. And the power system? Margaret asked. Victoria smiled. Dad's clean energy tech will be ready, tested, safe and fully legitimate. No weapons potential, just pure possibility. Outside the diner's windows, winter sunlight played on passing faces. People hurrying to work, to school, to the 1,000 small missions that made up a community's life. Soon they would have a new place to gather, to learn, to grow. The Sarah Thompson Center for Scientific Discovery was no longer just a dream. It was becoming real, one cup of coffee, one conversation, one connection at a time. The Blackwood Industries boardroom hadn't changed, but Victoria had. She stood at the head of the gleaming table, facing down the remaining board members with quiet confidence. Marcus and Margaret flanked her, while Emma sat in a corner, ostensibly, working on homework but missing nothing. This emergency session of the board will come to order, the corporate secretary announced, his voice wavering slightly. Before we begin, Victoria said, I should mention that this meeting is being broadcast live to all Blackwood Industries employees. Transparency being our new corporate policy. The board members shifted uncomfortably. These were the last holdouts, the ones who hadn't been arrested or resigned, the ones who still thought they could salvage their power. Ms. Blackwood, Jenkins, the senior member, leaned forward. We understand you've been through a traumatic experience. Perhaps it would be wise to take some time, allow more experienced hands to guide the company through this transition. Experienced hands, Victoria repeated softly, like the ones that authorized illegal weapons research, or the ones that signed off on my kidnapping. She pressed a button, and documents appeared on the screens surrounding the room. Financial records, email chains, encrypted messages, a web of evidence connecting every person at the table to Robert's conspiracy. But that's not why we're here today, Victoria continued. We're here to vote on the company's new direction. The Sarah Thompson Initiative for Community Development. Jenkins scoffed. You want to turn a multi-billion-dollar technology company into a charity? No! Victoria's voice hardened. I want to turn it into something that matters. My father's clean energy technology, properly applied, could transform communities like the one that took me in. The one that showed me what real power looks like. The shareholders will never approve, another board member protested. Actually, Margaret stepped forward, they already have. While you were trying to maintain control, Victoria's evidence caused a major stock shift. Community pension funds, ethical investment groups, they've been buying up shares. You're now officially outnumbered. Emma looked up from her homework. It's like a chemical reaction, she said clearly. When you add the right catalyst, everything changes. Jenkins stood abruptly. This is absurd. I won't sit here and watch decades of corporate policy be overturned by a naive girl and a child. Then you should resign, Marcus suggested quietly. before the SEC asks more questions about your offshore accounts. The room went very still. One by one, the board members looked at their phones, seeing messages from lawyers, shareholders, federal investigators. The ground was shifting beneath their feet, and they knew it. "I believe," Victoria said into the silence, "we should vote now on both the new company direction and the replacement of board members with community representatives." She smiled. "Unless anyone else would like to resign first?" The next hour was a formality. Votes were taken, resignations tendered, and by the time the corporate secretary called the meeting to a close, Blackwood Industries had transformed. Victoria's father's legacy was secure, but reshaped into something he might never have imagined. "That's it?" Emma asked as they left the boardroom. "We won. We won," Victoria confirmed. "Now, the real work begins." They rode the elevator down. Together, the unlikely family forged in crisis and tempered by purpose. Outside, reporters waited to hear about the company's dramatic restructuring. But their real audience was elsewhere, in community centers yet to be built, in lives yet to be changed. "Mum would have loved this," Emma said softly, "especially the part about the pension funds. She always said money should work for people, not the other way around." Marcus pulled her close. "She sees it, kiddo. Somehow, she sees it." Victoria watched them, feeling the weight of her father's legacy transform into something lighter, brighter, something that could grow, like Emma's beloved Fibonacci sequence, into infinite possibility. The recording device in her pocket held every word of the board meeting, final proof of their victory, but also a beginning. A testament to what happens when power meets purpose, when corporate might bows to community wisdom. Tomorrow, construction would begin on the Sarah Thompson Center. Tomorrow, they would start building the future they'd imagined in those dark hours at the safe house. But for now, they stood together in the fading afternoon light, a family created by choice and courage, ready to write the next chapter. Spring sunshine warmed the crowd gathered outside the Sarah Thompson Center for Scientific Discovery. The old factory had been transformed, its brick walls gleaming, its windows sparkling, and above the entrance, a quote in elegant script: "The universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it is stranger than we can imagine." Emma stood at the podium, her science fair trophy, first place of course, displayed beside her. "My mom used to say that numbers were just the universe's way of showing us how everything connects," she said into the microphone. "This center is about connections, between learning and opportunity, between dreams and reality, between people who want to help and people who need it." In the front row, Marcus and Victoria sat hand in hand, watching the young girl who had brought them together. Mrs. Rodriguez dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, while Margaret smiled proudly from her seat on the board of directors. The ribbon waited red and gleaming for the ceremonial cut, but first Emma had more to say. "6 months ago, I was kidnapped by people who thought power meant controlling others. But my dad and Victoria and everyone here, they showed me that real power comes from helping others grow, like the Fibonacci sequence." She grinned at the crowd's murmur of amusement at her favorite mathematical reference. "So today, when we open these doors, we're not just opening a building, we're opening possibilities. The science lab upstairs has better equipment than most universities. The computer center offers free training for anyone who wants to learn. The daycare means parents can take classes without worrying about childcare." She gestured to the solar panels that covered the roof, Victoria's father's technology, finally being used as he'd intended. "And everything is powered by clean energy. That costs almost nothing, so we can spend our resources on what really matters, people." Victoria squeezed Marcus's hand as Emma picked up the scissors. They'd come so far from that cold New Year's Eve, from a rusty cage and an act of courage that had changed everything. The ribbon parted with a satisfying snick, and the crowd burst into applause. As people began filing into the building for tours, Marcus pulled Victoria close. "Thank you," he whispered. "For everything." She touched his face gently. "Thank you for teaching me what really matters." Emma bounded down from the podium, her eyes shining. "Come on, wait until you see how the observatory turned out. On clear nights you can see Jupiter's moons." They followed her inside, into the future they'd built together, into a place where dreams could grow, like numbers in an endless sequence, reaching always toward light. 6 months after the center's opening, Marcus found Victoria in the observatory late one evening. She sat at the main telescope, making minor adjustments while consulting Emma's meticulously kept observation log. "Jupiter's moons are particularly clear tonight," she said without turning around. "Emma's calculations for their positions were perfect. She gets that from her mother," Marcus said, setting a cup of coffee beside her. "The precision, the patience, and the heart from her father." Victoria finally looked up, smiling. "Did you see today's enrollment numbers? We had to add 2 more computer classes and another science program." The center had exceeded all their expectations. Every day brought new stories of lives changed. Single parents earning certifications, children discovering science, elderly residents learning new skills. Mrs. Rodriguez ran the community outreach program with remarkable efficiency, while Margaret's security team had evolved into mentors for at-risk youth. "I've been thinking," Victoria said softly, "about that night, the cage, the cold, the fear. If you hadn't come along, but I did." Marcus touched her shoulder gently. "And look what grew from that moment. Through the observatory's windows, they could see the city lights below. Somewhere out there, other communities were already adopting their model. Victoria's father's technology was transforming lives, one neighborhood at a time." "Emma asked me something interesting today," Victoria said, her voice careful. "She wanted to know if I was going to be her mom now." Marcus's heart skipped. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that Sarah will always be her mom, but that maybe if she wanted I could be something new, something different but just as real." She turned to face him fully. "I told her that family isn't about replacing what's lost. It's about growing something new from the roots of love that remain." Marcus thought about Sarah, about how she would have appreciated Victoria's wisdom, her gentle way with Emma, her determination to make the world better. "She's right, you know," he said. "Emma, about you being family now. You have been since that first night when you sat in our kitchen eating cereal and talking about Jupiter's great red spot." Victoria stood, moving into his arms with the natural ease that had grown between them. Above, through the telescope's lens, distant stars wheeled in their ancient paths. Below, in classrooms and computer labs, tomorrow's dreams were taking shape. They had built something remarkable here. Not just the center, but a family forged by choice and circumstance, strengthened by shared purpose. A family that, like Emma's beloved mathematics, continued to grow in beautiful, unexpected ways. The idea came from Emma, naturally. She presented it to Marcus one afternoon while they were painting a new mural in the center's entrance hall, a spiral galaxy design that incorporated the Fibonacci sequence. "You should propose to Victoria in the observatory," she said matter-of-factly, adding another star to the swirling pattern. "During the meteor shower next week. It's perfect timing." Marcus nearly dropped his paintbrush. "Emma, Dad," she turned to face him, hands on her hips in a pose so reminiscent of Sarah that it made his heart ache. "I see how you look at her, how she looks at you, and I see how we fit together, like one of Mom's equations working itself out." And so, on the night of the meteor shower, Marcus found himself in the observatory with Emma's help. She had programmed the telescope coordinates, arranged the room with tiny LED lights that mimicked constellations, and even convinced Mrs. Rodriguez to provide her special hot chocolate. When Victoria arrived, ostensibly for a late-night observation session, she found Marcus waiting. The ring was simple, a band of silver with a pattern that echoed the spiral of galaxies, designed with Emma's input. Sarah taught me that love isn't about holding on to the past, Marcus said softly. It's about having the courage to embrace new beginnings. And you, Victoria, are the bravest person I know. Above them, meteors streaked across the sky, like nature's own celebration. And when Victoria said yes, Emma's delighted whoop from her hidden spot behind the door made them all laugh through happy tears. Their family's constellation was complete. New Year's Eve again. But everything had changed. The Sarah Thompson Center for Scientific Discovery glowed with warmth against the winter night, its windows bright with celebration. Inside the observatory, Emma led a group of children in tracking the evening's celestial events, her confidence growing with every explanation. And Jupiter's moons, she pointed through the telescope, are especially clear tonight, just like they were when Victoria taught me how to paint the great red spot. Victoria and Marcus stood in the doorway, watching with pride. Her engagement ring caught the starlight, its spiral pattern matching the galaxy mural behind them. Mrs. Rodriguez passed by with a tray of her famous hot chocolate, now a center tradition. 1 year, Marcus said softly. Hard to believe. The best kind of equation, Victoria replied, is the one that solves itself in unexpected ways. As midnight approached, they gathered on the roof. The city spread below them, dotted with lights, while above, the winter stars wheeled in their ancient paths. Emma had calculated the exact moment of the new year, timing it with astronomical precision. When the moment came, surrounded by the family they had built and the community they had transformed, Marcus and Victoria shared a kiss that tasted of promise. Their story, like the universe itself, was still expanding, growing, reaching toward light. And somewhere, in the infinite, dance of stars, Sarah smiled.